Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, the Toronto Raptors have a phenomenal young core, good group of players, the bench mob, anyone who's on the roster, but in your opinion, who is the best Toronto Raptor young guy on the roster?
No, you can start, but let's preface this. Well, let me preface it by saying that I'm going to go extremely hard in opposition against whoever it is that you say. So, as a person that's listening to this video, if you feel in agreement with either side, then voice your opinion in the comment section. Hit the like button. Say which player you support the most. I'll let you start though, because I think that I have a pretty compelling argument for my player.
Okay, because I think you have a sneaking suspicion after, speaking with me for a solid year on the Toronto Raptors of who I'm going to pick. I think there's no argument. I think it's blatantly OG Anunoby. I think, there's three people really in contention for this. People might argue Norm, but I think it's really just Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby. And I think it's by far OG, as last year he was our starting small forward. He's younger than those two players, as OG is, he's 21 currently. Pascal is currently 24 and turning 25, and same with Fred VanVleet, he's 24. So he's got a couple years in youth on them. He's, I think, inarguably, out of the three players, the best defender. He can stretch the floor, and his potential, now I love Pascal Siakam's potential. I think he's going to take a huge step forward, but OG has ridiculous defense and natural size and ability and length, along with the ability to shoot the three very consistently. He was a 37% three-point shooter last season. That's only going to get better. So once he adds a handle and just is able to slash, which is a skill that people have been shown to been able to develop over their NBA career, I think OG legitimately has the best shot at becoming a two-way possible all-star in the NBA.
Okay. Fair. Now we're going to start immediately, all right? Immediately from last season. The better player on the team was Fred VanVleet, okay?
Yes, last season, yeah, okay.
If we just look at stats, okay? If we just look at stats, better points, better assists, almost the same amount of rebounds, total rebounds, all right?
Yep.
This is coming from your point guard, who's only 6 foot. Now, you just talked about, his raw athletic ability, that of OG Anunoby, because of his size. Now, it's difficult to say that he's, without a doubt, the better defender or the best defender when the guy who's 6 foot is pulling down equally as many rebounds. Now, of course, rebound doesn't necessarily mean defending, but you can't really give the direct comparison because OG Anunoby is able to play at more positions. That doesn't mean he becomes a better defender. I mean, you're never going to play your point guard up a position unless you swing him to the 2, which that's not Fred VanVleet's role. Same as that's usually not Kyle Lowry's role, right? But Fred VanVleet, you can't take away, is a terrific on-ball defender. He's had multiple stops. I mean, he's the ability to press, right, in the full court trap. That's all Fred VanVleet and DeLon Wright. Right, and they've taken so many teams off guard and by surprise, and getting crucial steals. So and it's difficult to talk about metrics when you think about defense, right? Because it's of course it's impact, but you wouldn't take away points from Kyle Lowry to say he's not a good defender because his ability to draw a charge is not in the immediate stat range. But you can obviously say that Kyle Lowry is one of the best one of the craftiest defenders at the point guard position in terms of drawing fouls. Right? Or, sorry, taking a charge.
Yep. So
that point is a little bit hard to really do a one-to-one comparison, but Fred VanVleet was the better player, all right? He's also going to have the better career. So I'll give you the opportunity first to say why you think that OG will have the better career, and then I'll give the response, because I'm certain that Fred VanVleet is going to have a better career and a longer career.
Well, just to combat because you brought up the defense and saying it's hard to compare. OG Anunoby, right? Just because Fred VanVleet, he's fleet of foot, he's strong, he's stocky, he can guard a point guard position very well. He's proven to be able to do that. OG Anunoby can guard the point guard position just as quickly, just as movable as Fred VanVleet, with longer arms and bigger stature and all those things. He can also guard the 2, the 3, and the 4, right? OG Anunoby is just more versatile. Just on the defensive end, you have to take into account size and athleticism. It's not something that you can just, maybe in a vacuum if they were the same height and all that sort of stuff. then they'd be the.
But that's not the argument. It's different. Yeah. It's different. It's completely different if you're comparing a shooting guard, because from a shooting guard you can expect them to have to defend up and down, right? You have to allow your shooting guard to be able to guard the 3 and the 1 as well as their own natural position. Small forward has to be the most has to have the most dexterity of all the positions. They have to almost be able to go up to the center if they're a proper size.
That's why he's more valuable, though.
And then equally. But that's not the case. That's not the case. Who's more valuable on the OKC Thunder? This not the last season, because obviously Paul George is one of the best defenders in the league as well. But who was more valuable? Whoever was playing at the 3 or Russell Westbrook? Russell Westbrook would never guard up a position.
I'm getting into the offensive side, but defensive versatility.
I was talking about defense as well.
Yeah.
But versatility.
Then Paul George is more valuable on defense to the OKC Thunder than Russell Westbrook.
Except the point guard. Because the point guard, you're never going to push them. You're never going to push them any higher than the 2. So it's fine that you can say the small forward can guard all 5 positions, but they have to. That's the mandate from them from the league. That's the minimum requirement.
Let's just say, because you brought up the Thunder as an example, right? Let's just say the Thunder are playing against Portland, who has their main star as a point guard, right? They will throw Paul George on Damian Lillard because they want their best defender guarding the best player on the other team. Then you can slide Westbrook to the 2, right? OG Anunoby has the potential and has proven that he's able to, right? He guarded Houston's point guard, right? James Harden last year and just absolutely locked him up, right? We saw him switch on to guys like John Wall and Bradley Beal, who play the dominant ball position on the Wizards. Right, OG has shown that he can be the Toronto Raptors' best defender, and not necessarily. Well, no one in the NBA can lock down a superstar, but really slow down top tier guys. Right, defensively, I don't think there's an argument that OG just brings so much more valuable to the Toronto Raptors on the defensive end, and his potential, because you have to take into account. Well, I guess you wanted to bring up Fred VanVleet's future career, but OG he has the raw skills of a prototypical 2018 NBA player, and developing a handle, developing these things is something he's going to get. So not only does he have on the defensive side of the court, he just has so much more room to grow on the offensive side.
I mean, that can be true, but it can also go both ways. We've also had players that have had this sort of natural sense of athleticism, and they've had a high ceiling, and they've completely fallen short of what they can grow into. And that's the thing about uncertainty when it comes to taking a player. If you have Ben McLemore, he had an extremely high ceiling when he was going into the draft, slipped multiple spots, still was considered to have decent potential for the Sacramento Kings, and then turned into an absolutely non-existent player in the league. Now, Fred VanVleet, he might not have the same ceiling that OG has right now, or that OG offers, but he's already a consistent player, and he already has the same ceiling as that of players that have been all-stars. And if you can have a player that you can develop into an all-star, there's not really much more that you can ask besides best player on the team, best player in the league, or finals MVP. And I will be hard-pressed for you to have the argument that a rookie has the potential to be the finals MVP. At least an argument that you can base off of facts. Of course, we can say maybe he could become a finals MVP. Kawhi Leonard did it. That's possible. But if we were to stick in purely the realm of what we can argue via facts, right? We look at Jameer Nelson. That's a nice comparison for Fred VanVleet. We've talked about it before. Okay?
Yep.
Now, of course, it's a little bit different for Fred VanVleet. He's 24. He's had a couple of years, to develop into the position that he is now. But for all intents and purposes, we're just going to look at minutes per game. All right? So the role that we're comfortable in allowing Fred VanVleet to play in the actual NBA game. And last season, it was 20 minutes. 20 minutes per game. All right? And with the points with his averages was about 9 points a game, about 3 assists a game, a little bit more, and about 2.5 rebounds per game. Now, if we look at Jameer Nelson, in his season that he averaged the exact same amount of minutes, 20.4 minutes, he was also averaging about 9 points, about 3 assists, and about 2.5 rebounds. He had the exact same stat line. Now, it wasn't until 4 seasons after that he had his all-star season, 16 points a game. It doesn't matter the stats. Yeah. But at this point, he's being trusted with... I just had the number, and now I lost it. 30 minutes a game. So if we give Fred VanVleet 2 more seasons, which they're doing, they just gave him that contract, and Kyle Lowry becomes an old man, like he is slowly becoming, I would have trust that they are going to eventually bring Fred VanVleet up into the starting point guard position, or else some low-level team like the Orlando Magic is going to swoop him away. And I know Masai Ujiri has decided to allow Fred VanVleet to become a starting point guard. Then it is completely imaginable that he would have the same trajectory as Jameer Nelson with the exact same stat line, who was a good player, an all-star, and he's been in the league for 14 seasons. I mean...
Okay.
This is a player that you can guarantee will get that because that's what his stats support right now. With OG, there's so much... It's not guaranteed anything. We're just saying that there's the possibility that he could develop into a good player.
Okay. So, Riker, you brought up a lot of points there, right? And you basically mentioned that Fred VanVleet, his ceiling, right? His ceiling as a player is Jameer Nelson, who is a very good NBA player. He's an all-star. You brought all that cool stuff up. And, I don't want to say that, Fred is... Because I'm very high on Fred VanVleet as well. But his ceiling is a guy like Jameer or, one of those smaller guards, maybe Ty Lawson at his peak. That's his ceiling. If you look at a guy like OG, he's 3 years younger than Fred VanVleet. And his ceiling is, could possibly, maybe more unrealistic, but a guy like Kawhi Leonard, right? That's just his position, his athleticism, his defensive ability. That's the sort of guy that OG Anunoby could be if we're talking about ceiling and potential and just value to the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, my argument wasn't specifically ceiling. My argument is not ceiling for Fred VanVleet is better than the ceiling that of OG Anunoby. My argument is that your argument about OG Anunoby's potential is merely based on the fact that he has the ability to improve his ball handling and his shooting and his playmaking and his IQ. But all of those things need to happen in order for him to develop into a good player. Because if we look at the last season in comparison to other rookies from that class who excelled, they played 10 times better than he did. Those are completely random numbers. I don't know why I went with as low as 9.
I think that's an exaggeration.
But the thing is, you could easily see watching Ben Simmons play or watching Jason Tatum play or watching Donovan Mitchell play that these guys are going to be stars because they have all the assets already. Now, when they continue to develop their ball handling, with OG Anunoby, he constantly looks scared on the floor or he looks like he's just very passive. He has the personality, it seems, that of Andrew Wiggins or somebody who isn't really has the desire to become a great player, such as RJ Barrett that we were just talking about recently. He's a player that lived out on the 3-point line with an ugly shot form. So it's not even to say
good shooter though. He has a good 3-point percentage.
Yes, but I mean, form plays a huge part. That's why Steph Curry is so good, and that's why somebody like Randy Foye is not the next Steph Curry, is because form does matter. So my point is not that the ceiling is not as high. My point is that Fred VanVleet already has the consistency to guarantee that he will have a minimum standard of playing, and that if he continues along the trajectory that he's going, and this is without any sort of dramatic improvement, that he has the trajectory of that to get him to all-star levels such as Jameer.
But what skills is Fred VanVleet going to improve on? He's a 6-foot guard.
He just needs more time.
He's already a phenomenal shooter.
In the league. Exactly. He already has all the pieces. He just needs to be given 31 minutes per game, such as Jameer Nelson's 5th season, and then who knows, he could have the 16 points per game as well. I don't think it's very hard for him to have a 16-5 season. And if that's all-star material, then I think that he would be ultimately, long run, the better player than OG. And this is because I'm not convinced that OG Anunoby will develop into the best player that you think he will.
Okay, so you brought up different players in OG's class. Right? OG has shown defensive potential just to be significantly higher than Jason Tatum and Ben Simmons and those sort of guys. Obviously, they're more refined coming out of college. But if you look at OG's improvement from his final year in college compared to his rookie season, he took a dramatic leap. OG Anunoby was 20 years old last season. Players at this age, usually, wing guys like this, that are raw coming out of college, they take big steps, right? And I already brought up the Kawhi Leonard comparison. So let's look at Kawhi Leonard's first year in the NBA. 8 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist. He had a similar 3-point shooting percentage to OG, 37%. Right? This is a guy that came out of college similar to OG, drafted in the same range in the draft, right? And then he took steps. He took baby steps toward becoming a better player, only averaged 11, 12, 16, 21, 25. right? I'm not saying next season necessarily that OG will necessarily eclipse Fred VanVleet or even Pascal Siakam, but this skill level of a wing player that can shoot threes and lock up NBA guys, right? If you look at Kawhi Leonard as a rookie in his rookie season, he looked exactly the same. He was afraid to dribble the ball. He couldn't get to the rim. He couldn't slash. If you look at a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who's a pure scorer, right? He came into the NBA known as a slasher, but he couldn't dribble the basketball, right? He could jump really high and catch alley-oops from Jose Calderon, but he couldn't dribble and create his own shot. That was something that he had to develop, right? These wing guys that have improved in different areas, and OG has shown going from college to the NBA, he's taken a massive leap. And those guys that sort of do that, like Kawhi, like DeMar DeRozan, that improve every year, I think they can develop a dribble handle. Fred VanVleet, he's a super skilled guy, but he can't add anything more just because of his physical limitations that OG Anunoby can add, right? Even if he doesn't improve crazy significantly, right? Just OG Anunoby's value as a three-point shooter that will get more comfortable. Because you brought up the point that OG does look scared. I combat you. I think he's a very hard worker and has a tougher mentality than Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is obviously probably more talented than any young guy on our roster, but doesn't have that cutthroat, go-at-him mentality. OG Anunoby, when asked how does he feel about guarding LeBron James, he's not scared, right? He brushes all that sort of off. He wants to play the best players, be the best guy, and he has the physical tools, and obviously we're debating potential here. There's no sure thing. Yep. But you want to take the guy that has proven he can improve, who's got the mentality that he wants to go at the best players, and has the physical abilities. And not to mention, coming into this season, he was injured. He's coming off an ACL injury, right? As someone that has had a torn ACL, you're not 100% till 2 years later. So we aren't even seeing the peak 20-year-old OG Anunoby. So I just think he's going to be phenomenal.
Fred also came off an injury and still had better stats. And if we're arguing about potential, the argument is still there.
What injury did Fred have?
Fred VanVleet had a shoulder injury.
Yeah, but that was at the end of the year, and he didn't really play that well in the playoffs.
Fair enough.
With the shoulder injury.
Fair enough. But the thing is, if we're looking at season past, Fred VanVleet was the better player. If we're looking at next season, you've already concurred that Fred will probably be the better player. If we're looking
depending on how quickly OG develops.
If we look at long term, we've already probably determined that Fred has a more guaranteed path to longevity in the NBA. And now your final point about Fred not being able to develop is absurd. If we look at somebody you've determined as one of your favorite players in the league, in Kyle Lowry, he was not the player that he was. He didn't become an all-star level point guard until he made it to the Toronto Raptors. When he was on the Houston Rockets, he was a Fred VanVleet, right? He was a guy that had size but didn't have skill. And if you're going to tell me that Kyle Lowry didn't make the leap to become one of the best point guards in the league from Houston to Toronto, then that's absurd because he doesn't have athleticism either. And yet he developed his game. He developed his three-point shooting. He developed his ball handling. He developed his defensive IQ. He developed his speed. I mean, he plays an all-around game. He is the court general. He is a player that people sleep on very often on the Toronto Raptors team, myself included, to forget how good Kyle Lowry really is. So to say that Fred VanVleet has no ability to develop his game such as Kawhi Leonard might, I think that, as OG Anunoby might.
OG, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a harsh statement as well, because now you're saying that this guy who was undrafted and fought all of his way to be re-signed to the Toronto Raptors, to be one of the key pieces on this team, to be sought out by other teams in the league, you're taking away that he wasn't even drafted in the league. He had to work his way up there. So there's no saying that he's not going to continue to develop his game and to continue to, have the motivation to become a starting point guard in the NBA, to continue to have the motivation to become, an MVP level player, an all-star level player. I don't know what ultimately will become of anything, but it's a good argument I think that we had on both sides. We're kind of encroaching on the 20-minute mark now. I think that this is maybe a good point if you want to have one last argument to maybe refute those points, or if you want to leave it to the fans. This was really entertaining. Yeah. Like I said, I prefaced that at the beginning. I don't hate OG Anunoby. I just wanted to make sure that I really went as far in the opposition as I possibly could have. But
that's kind of what I want to address too. I think Fred VanVleet has a very substantial ceiling and could become a, not necessarily, because Kyle Lowry is a very good player. Jameer Nelson became a very good player in the NBA, right? But who would you rather have, just off the top of your head, Kawhi Leonard or Kyle Lowry? Who?
We got them both. Don't have to decide.
yeah, but who would you rather have? You know what I mean? Kawhi Leonard, just the ceiling that OG could, obtain. I think that's just makes him more valuable to the Toronto Raptors. I know we're going super long. Pascal Siakam, do you want to say anything on him?
No, we'll leave it. We'll leave it on this. We'll leave it on this.
Yeah. We're sorry for leaving him out. We got into a heated debate there. Let us know who you guys think is the top tier Toronto Raptors young guy. OG, Fred, Siakam, Norman Powell maybe. DeLon's kind of older. Jonas. Let us know in the comment section below. You're the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff.
Ciao, ciao.